chart house, totally devoted to navigation. I have to be honest, this is my favorite room on the tour. I got a lot to talk about. Now the Army has maps, hills, terrains, mountains, that kind of thing. They get lost a lot. The Navy has charts. That's San Diego Bay behind you, Subic Bay in the Philippines. This is Yokosuka, Japan, where the Midway was stationed. And normally the chart will show anchorage, landmarks, depth of water, that type of thing. Okay, you're on deep green water. There's nothing to see but water. Captain looks at the navigation officer on the bridge and says, "Where in the heck are we?" Calls back here to the quartermaster, and the quartermaster tells him where he's at. There's about 5 different ways he can navigate. The first and least accurate is called dead reckoning. Okay, we know where we were a couple hours ago. We know our course and speed, so we should be here. Unfortunately, the ocean doesn't cooperate all the time, so it's the least accurate, but they still use it. The next way is radar. Radar is good at night or by a landmass, but out in deep water it's not too good. All you're going to pick up is perhaps the flotilla that's around you. Okay, section. The black object underneath your elbow there is what the Midway used every morning and night. Very early in the morning they would shoot the stars, and it's based upon the angle of the star to the horizon. Then they would do it just at dusk when the stars are coming out again. Now it's interesting, Jim Lovell, the astronaut on Apollo 8 and 13, was a U.S. Navy captain. And even though Mission Control did the actual navigation, he took a section along with him, and he did it too, and it was very accurate. Now, the other thing is the chronometer. I know you can't all see these, but it's just paper cutouts. Am I going to be on TV?
Sure.
Paper
YouTube.
Cutouts.
Just kidding.
The chronometer is very interesting. In the 17th century, the British Navy lost 2,000 sailors off the coast of Italy. They all drowned. Because in those days they could do latitude, but no one knew how to do longitude. So they went back to England. 2,000 guys is a lot of guys. Ran a contest. Someone come up with how to do longitude. And keep in mind how hard it is, because the ship's going up and down and sideways at the same time. A carpenter by the name of John Morrison come up with the first chronometer. He was a part-time clockmaker. Now that clock is still working. It's all wooden, no lubrication. It's in the museum in Greenwich, England. So when you hear the term Greenwich time, that's what it's referring to. The Navy still uses Greenwich time. They call it Zulu time. Okay. Now, what the Navy's using more and more is the GPS. That's that big gray box behind you there on the end of the table. We have about 26 satellites up there, and that'll tell us within 10 meters where we're at. It's very accurate. Music. And it's also given longitude and latitude. So the chronometers and the section are becoming redundant, but the Navy still uses them. Okay. Now we have a phantom meter. That's on the wall right next to you there. It's kind of nice to know how much water is underneath your vessel. That'll go down to about 36,000 feet, which is the Marietta Trench off of Guam. Doesn't get any deeper than that, so we got it covered. Okay. Now this is the mast. I'm kind of a history nut too. The mast stops just below here. In Greek mythology, when the Greeks built a ship, they would put coins underneath the mast. So if the ship sank, they could buy their way into heaven. Well, the Romans liked this idea and kept it going. Then the British Navy did it, the American Navy does it, and then even the Coast Guard did it. And I had a guest from the San Diego Yacht Club, and they do it too. Now, this tradition is called stepping the mast, and they still do it in the Navy today. They try to put the same number of coins down there that's equal to the number of the ship. So there might be 4 dimes and a penny down there. I don't know. If you get a chance, look in front of the jet shop. There's a yellow trainer, the SNJ, and in the middle is a glass, and then there's a silver wire underneath. I took a flashlight, and it looks like a 1941 penny. That's a Pratt & Whitney tradition. And the Pratt & Whitney always puts a penny in the middle of their engine. And I didn't know why, but a guest told me because a bad penny always finds its way home. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it sounded pretty good. And I had a guest of teenage girls up here and their teacher. Out of all this equipment that I find fascinating, I love, what they zeroed in on was a dial telephone on the mast. They had never seen a dial telephone. They were trying to figure out how it worked. You know? So I know we're getting old. You know? There's 1,500 phones on the Midway. There's 2,500 phones on the Ronald Reagan. So somebody's talking to somebody. Also, I drive across this country a lot. I went back to New York 3,000 miles last June. And there's 3,000 miles of cable on this ship. And I still can't get my mind around that. That's a lot of cable. And the most frequent question I'm asked is, how do they fix it? And I haven't got a clue, and I'm just so happy I don't have to do it. Okay, let me go over to the bridge, see if they're out of there, and we can go in there. Excuse me. It's okay. It's okay. This is actually where the Midway stopped, right there. In 1947 to 50, they redid it and put the bridge out here because you can see it was kind of crowded in there. Okay, officers' country. The captain sits in that chair there. The navigation officer in the chair behind you, sir. We have an officer of the deck stands up here. We have a junior officer deck stands here. He's in training. He would be the one that says, this is the junior officer of the deck. I have the con, which means he's the only one who can give orders to the helmsman. All right? Now, the captain can come aboard and say, as a captain, I have the con. He's the only one who can overrule him. We have a junior officer of the watch stands here. He's looking at radar. He's got binoculars. He's telling the enlisted man behind what we call the skunk board, what's out there, what their course and speed are, and he's writing backwards who's out there. We have a quartermaster of the watch, keeps a rough log here, also helps the navigator on the chart over there. And a boatswain mate of the watch, he's keeping track of the enlisted men, making sure they behave. Squeeze in. No, go ahead. Okay, this is where the lee helmsman stands. The junior officer of the deck will say full speed ahead, and the lee helmsman will mark it full speed ahead. And this is a telegraph. If you get a chance, please go down the engine room. It's pretty neat. Down the engine room, there's a big board we call the throttle board. It's like a dashboard on a car. A bell rings. The engineman looks up, sees this telegraph up there, follows out the orders, and a bell rings up here, so we know we did it. Now, we only open one engine room on the ship. We have 4 of them. When all 4 are underway, we get 100,000 horsepower out of this ship. That's equivalent to 140 locomotives. So it's pretty strong going. Now this is the lee helmsman. This is a 4-hour watch. We have a helmsman stands over here. He's actually moving the rudders of the ship. These 2 guys can change places if they get bored. We have gyroscope repeaters here. We have a compass. We have ship's whistles here. Now we can never dock on the port side because of the angle deck. We always dock on the starboard side. This room over here is called the auxiliary con. The captain would go in there, sit there, and dock the ship. Now we can't get all these ships up there, so we got a picture of supply replenishment. What happens, the Navy knows our course, they'll send out a supply ship. The senior officer will set the course and speed. Normally it's slower, 12 knots or something. They'll shoot lines across. These lines are attached to bigger lines until we get our jet fuel and diesel fuel lines. That's how they get replenished. Now what I find interesting, the catapult's steam operated. Take a hot shower, the water's heated by steam. All the food in the galley is heated by steam, all cooked by steam. We heat that steam with diesel fuel. Now the nuclear power aircraft carriers are all the same, all steam, except they heat that steam with nuclear power, so they can stay out a lot longer too. We have to be resupplied. All right. If you look at the model in front of the jet shop of the Gerald Ford, no steam. It's the first carrier, no steam. It's all electromagnetic. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know anything about it, but. Okay, as you go down here, past here, this is Captain C cabin. He's always up here when we're out to sea. This is his responsibility. He's got a nice stateroom down below him, and the Admiral have the only 2 rooms with real beds on them. Okay. You go down some sea ladders, you'll be right out on the flight deck. I'm real glad to see you guys. You're the last tour of my watch. I'm going home, take a nap, take a hot shower. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned something. I hope you had a good time. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.